Hey everyone, good morning and welcome back to my channel. Today we're gonna do an interesting video and I just wanted to talk about how my journey with journaling and planning have been over the years. So I have all my planners and notebooks and journals lined out here, and I want to talk about how I got into journaling and how it's been going for me lately, and a lot of mistakes. I wouldn't say mistakes, but a lot of things that I have learned along the way that I just wanted to share with you. And maybe you might relate to some of this, as someone who loves to write in books and also like to collect stationery. So without further ado, we're just gonna get straight into it. And I'll try to link the products that I talk about in the description below as much as I can. But if I'm not able to, I'll try to find alternatives for them, which you might be interested to check out. So we're going to talk about the year 2020, and I would say that this is the year that I actually started journaling. While I used to use books before, I don't think I even, gave it much thought, prior to 2020. So like many of us, I will say like this is towards the end of 2019, I started getting into stationery a lot, and I was kind of introduced to the Hobonichi brand through this YouTuber called Rainbowholic, Kayla from Rainbowholic. And I think many of us were inspired by her and her spreads in the Hobonichi. And the first time I saw this book, I was like, what is this? This is like so interesting. And so this was late 2019. And that's when, when 2020 came, I was like, okay, I really want to try this out. And I made my first order with Hobonichi in early 2020. And I got the A6 avec version, which is basically the whole year is split into two books, which is basically the Jan to June and the July to December. And I really had no idea, honestly speaking, that there was even a full year version available. I thought that, the Hobonichi by standard comes with two books that helps you separate out the year. And I will say that, I probably should have done a little bit more research into the brand myself before getting into it. And I will talk a little bit about, how my experience has been. So I'm going to move the July to December out of the way and basically talk about the 2020. I actually purchased a yellow cover as well for this, but I have since then sold it. And I think I sold it last year. And I will say, I started off with like this whole scrapbooking idea of trying to cut up pieces from magazines or from receipts that I find. And I think it went well for a long time. And I'm gonna, this is really embarrassing to share also, because I feel like I just, this is not my favorite book. I used to just cut up pieces of paper and just write however I wanted. And, while I was inclined to do it in the beginning, I feel as though that this is not my style. This is definitely not my style. I was trying to mimic something that I was not, very comfortable with. And I feel like I didn't have the, courage to admit it to myself as well. And while I did a lot of creative things in here. Like I stuck things in here and made like small notes to myself, like the ones that you see here. I feel as though while it was interesting in the start, it kind of became very taxing on me to try and find these pieces of paper and then have to like stick it in your journal and probably write something about it. I found that whole idea a little bit difficult for me as time went by. And while I would not journal every single day, I wouldn't bother about the dates, and I would just continue writing and continue sticking things that, I felt was good at the time. And I will be very honest with you, this is not something that I like at all when I'm looking at it now. I completely ignored, the lines, the grids. And I also feel like as the time goes by, I feel like I became like really tired of this whole setup, and eventually just ended up not completing it. So somewhere in between, I think this is like April, you see all of these empty pages. And honestly, I don't even feel like reusing this book now, because there's a lot that has, gone into it, that it's a little difficult for me to even, write in this. And this is not my style anymore. And I think I felt a little bit disappointed in the brand. I wouldn't say I felt disappointed in the brand. I feel like I myself should have done a little bit more research about the brand. I feel like I did not do enough research, and I did something that was totally not me. And I'm glad I, tried it out. And I very quickly came to realize, I think March of the year is when I came to realize is this is not going to work for me. And honestly, I have so many blank pages in here. And of course, that's when the second book comes in, which I haven't even used. I've used a bit of it, I think. I have used a little bit to, probably use it for the stickers that I've created. And I think I just have this book out here, which is completely not used. And I don't know what it is about the A6. I feel like I cannot use the A6 anymore. And at least for journaling or planning, this size is not working for me. And that is something that I've quickly come to realize. I may reuse this book later on as maybe just a notepad or something like that. But I feel like 2020, when I started journaling and quickly realized that scrapbooking is not my thing, I kind of, went down this path of never wanting to look at it again. And that's what happens, as you will soon see. Because it just ends up being something that I don't pick up for over a year. So after 2020, the next time I pick journals and, planners would be in 2022. And I think I felt really upset with myself that I was not even using it's actually a really nice page. I was not even able to use the page as well. So I feel like I did a lot of trauma dumping on these pages, and I don't feel like looking at them anymore. But of course, I do have that. See, like, I have things written in here that says some days all you can do is exist, and that is okay. And there are things that I actually did which are interesting. This was a letter that I wrote to my future self, which I haven't read in over 3 years. So I will probably read this off camera to see what it means, because I vaguely remember writing this. And there are things that I did, interestingly enough, but I feel like this is not something that is going to work for me anymore. So scrapbooking is something that I feel like is definitely not going to work. And while I do feel a little disappointed that I'm unable to use these books, I feel like this is a very good lesson on my part, that it's a good learning that I came to know that this is just not going to work for me. And that's okay, because while I don't want to be extremely hard on myself, I also understand that it's something that I just need to work through. So that's what happened in 2020. So on to the next year. And like I said, it would be over a year that I would start picking up journals again. And that's what I have lined up here. So this is basically the end of 2021 through 2022, and primarily focusing on 2022, which I will get into a bit. I don't know what it was, but I was really obsessed with the Travelers Company towards the latter half of 2021. I feel like this is the blue cover, by the way. I'm not sure if the light gets to fall right on this, but this is the blue. It does look a little very much similar to the black cover, but this is not the black one. So this is the blue one. And I had used this, I had ordered this from the official Travelers Company, and this was, I believe this is their collaboration with the Ace Hotel. This particular insert that I have here was the collaboration with the Ace Hotel. And I had purchased this grid notebook and the standard white, the plain book that comes along with the purchase, along with this particular insert. And while I was very much interested to use this, I feel like, this is something that this also ends up being quite a failure for me. So remember how I said I was not very interested in this whole scrapbooking kind of a thing, but I do try the scrapbooking model a little bit here, and I find that it was a lot more interesting. I also feel like I have not used this book or I have not used the book how I wanted it to be used. And primarily, one of the things that I realized was I do not like books that do not lay flat when you open it, because I feel like it gets in the way. And that's one of the reason I bought this, Penco clampy clasp. This is the larger clasp. But even with this, I find it really difficult to, write in it. And I feel like this is more, the Traveler's Notebook, at least for me, feels like something that I can probably take with me on a trip and not necessarily use it on, an actual planning / journaling, regular journaling. And that's what I felt. And while I do enjoy looking at the pages occasionally, I feel like this is also something that I try to avoid writing in. And that's a lot to say, because there are so many pages that are left, and I feel like the only way that I'm gonna pick this back up ever again is probably if I go on a trip. And I recently went on a trip. I'll be honest with you, I did not take the Traveler's Notebook with me, and I feel as though this is maybe something that I might sell. One of the other reasons that I feel like this did not work for me is because the leather is still very stiff, and I know that after you use it quite enough it will become softer, but I have not used enough for it to become softer. And it's just this constant state of dilemma that I'm in. And I feel like this is something that I feel like this, this thing right here it just bothers me. Like, there are certain things about this that just bothers me that I just don't understand how I can explain it better. But the part that it just does not lay flat on its own, and I have to constantly keep something. And if I'm ever filming it, then I'm just gonna have to clamp it out. They're just minute things that just irritate me when I'm actually looking at this. But all in all, I do feel like I can probably use this once again, but this did not work for me. And this was towards the end of 2021. And in the similar vein, I have these two books that I started using as for very minimal scrapbooking intent that started off pretty well. This is actually a dot grid. And I quickly realized yet again that dot grids do not work for me. I cannot figure out how to make a dot grid work. And I understand it would make more sense if you're using it as like a bullet journal. It helps you draw out the spreads better. It just does not work for me. I try to be like a little creative and, stick things in here like IKEA receipts and, regular things that I just find interesting. But this was also another book that it could not work for me. And while I think that a lot of it, I do have some stickers in the back here. I feel like the dot grid is another thing that just does not work for me. It's a lot of blank pages in this, but hopefully I can just use it as a notebook. Another one that I wanted to talk about, this is something that I started trying in the 2020, oh no, sorry, 2022, towards the beginning or towards the middle of 2022. This book also kind of started out being a scrapbook, but eventually I got it to line up very similar to the Hobonichi cousin. So I did start making like an invisible line here and just talking about my day on the right one. And I feel like I started this out, and that's when I realized that maybe I can mimic this with, a Hobonichi cousin. And like so many of us, I was also very much inspired by the Coffee Monsters Co., Helen from Coffee Monsters Co. And that's when I realized that instead of trying to write all of this out here, I can actually use the Hobonichi cousin as my, regular planner. And that's when I purchased the second half of the Hobonichi cousin for 2022. And let me tell you, I have loved this book ever since. And this is something that I realized that, the A6 does not work for me. Like I talked about in the previous segment. The A6 does not work for me, but the A5 is really good. And it helps me, I don't know what it is, but I felt like this book gave me enough space to write, and also like I was able to figure out by myself that I can actually write in the line. And I know it's a very silly thing to talk about, but I was very, very happy using this journal. I used this as a planner and a journal together. So every start of the month had some artwork that I, made. This is also something that I drew, which I eventually scanned and made into like a notepad for my shop. So it's these things that I don't know what it was. It just helped me like express myself a little better. I would just, if I needed more space, I would just stick these additional papers, these loose papers onto the journal. And while I was not completely scrapbooking in this, I would occasionally find things that look nice without having, that feeling of having to do it all the time. I would stick them in, and I just drew this over it. So there's a lot of creativity I feel that has gone into this book from my part. I feel like and I did a lot of annotating, and basically I've just made a list of all the flags that I use. Anything in this peach tone is art pieces. These are references, and I use the green ones as my Japanese language learning, and this is just an indication of how many sick days that how sick I was throughout the year. So there's quite a lot that has gone into this, and I feel like, I don't know what to say. I just completely fell in love with the Hobonichi cousin, and I have not missed a single day in this book, which is, we're gonna talk about 2023 now, because I feel like things have changed a little bit. At the end of the year, last year, I actually wrote a small letter to the Hobonichi cousin, and I was so sad to part with this book for some reason. And I feel like part of the reason that this worked for me was because I bought the half year, and I don't know, it was more easier for me to write without that extra chunk out there. So I feel like there are certain things that I completely understood towards the end of, using this book. And I would use the pages however I want. These are all the manga that I read in the latter half of the year. So there's 35 of them from June to December. I would use them to, write blog ideas or content maps. And there's a lot of, I feel like I used this book extremely well. And so it made sense for me to get this book again. But I was very much wanting to try out the full year, which is where we're going to talk about how 2023 has gone so far. So towards the end of 2022, and this is during September last year when Hobonichi released their, like preview party, and they were talking about the new covers and notebooks that are going to be in the lineup for the year 2023. I was one of those people who had the account ready and right away to make the purchase. So I was very much sure what I wanted, and I wanted to try the Weeks version because the Weeks is not something that I had tried before. So I did purchase a bunch of Weeks, and I also purchased a Hobonichi Cousin, the full year for 2023. And we're gonna talk about these 2 weeks first before I get into the actual Hobonichi Cousin. So the Hobonichi Weeks was meant to be my social media planner, and right now I'm trying to make certain changes to my shop. So this being a social media planner is not working for me. So right now, this particular book just stays in my bag. This is like my everyday carry. I just take it with me whenever I go out, and it just stays in my bag. It's light enough to, for me to, for it to be there. And I just take, there's not necessarily a need for me to take notes, but if at all I have a need to take notes, I do have it as like an extension of, my Hobonichi Cousin. So this is what I'm using the 2023 Weeks as. And I think this is going to continue staying in my bag regardless of what year I will be getting into, because there are a lot of blank pages and I can just use it as notes and things that I can transfer to my Hobonichi Cousin or other planners if required. This has been pretty good for me. And one of the things that happened in 2023 was I was actually looking to make a journal that I can carry with me throughout years. And that's how I converted this 2022 Weeks into a 7-year journal. And I have an extensive video about how I did that, and I will link that up in the cards above. But this has been really good for me. This was like, one of those genius moments that I have very rarely, that I used, and I just decorate it as like a 2023 to 2029 kind of a journal, and it has been going well so far. So this is something that I was very much interested in creating, and I believe this one is going to, I think it's going to just continue with me, and it's, again, light enough and portable enough for me to carry it around. So I feel like, as I've moved from the years, like from 2020, where I liked more of a scrapbooking style, I have realized that I am very much a minimalistic person. I wouldn't say minimalistic person, but the kind of journaling and planning I like to do is the ones which does not have a lot of deco. As long as I have a pen and maybe a few markers or a few page flags, which I find extensively useful. I feel like this is something that can just get me through most days. And that's something that I've realized as I've, started exploring more kinds of journaling. And I feel like this is going to continue well for me. So while we have spoken about, the Hobonichi Weeks, since I was successfully able to complete a half year in my Hobonichi Cousin avec, for 2022, I did pick up the full year Hobonichi 2023 Cousin, and originally I had this in a Going Merry logbook, the A5 size, but as of right now I find using that a little difficult because it's I don't have much space on my table, so whenever I'm opening it up, it just does not help me write properly. So I have switched into this Vanderspeck cover that I had purchased I think last year, and I feel like this works fine for me. So the current setup that I have is I usually keep a page flag in here, and I also, which is currently not available here, I usually keep my Sakura Pigma Micron pen right here, which is what I used to write with. And I have the Pilot Fiction erasable one and the Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen in the soft tip. as well that are, it just clings to this clasp. So I find this setup very useful. I feel like, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about this, I have not written every single day in this book, and that's something that I'm coming to terms with. While I was able to, journal and plan properly last year, this year it has been a little difficult for me to get into actual planning and journaling, for that matter. I try to do it whenever I can. So I feel like one of the other reasons why I'm not able to do it very efficiently is because this book is pretty big, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like maybe if I were to pick up the Hobonichi next year, I may actually switch to the EVEC version, which has the year split into two. So I started off, pretty consistently, having a lot of stickers and washi, and eventually I just kind of just fell off, for lack of a better term. And it's a little difficult, but I do feel like these pages are something that I can reuse. And I am noticing increasingly that I'm not able to, work in the same way that I have been able to work last year. So for example, I actually don't need a full spread for the day. I was writing on the 26th, but I continued writing on the same page the very next day as well. So I do have a blank page, which I probably should have used, but I am kind of making it work in a way that I'm only using pages where I'm actually needing it. So if I feel like I don't need an entire page, I might just go and write in the previous page. And I'm actually filming this on the Friday, so I did not write anything on the Thursday. So whatever I wrote was actually on the Wednesday. And it's just, it's just a little difficult to keep up with. But while I do have a lot of blank pages, I also feel like I can reuse this book probably next year, because I'm not very sure how my journaling or planning is going to go next year as well, which is one of the reasons I'm hesitating a lot in buying a planner. I know a lot of pre-orders have come out, and it is still July, and I really have no clue how my year is going to go for the rest of the year. And I think trying to, get into a planner or figuring out a planner in the middle of July for 2024 is going to be very difficult for me. And that's one of the reasons that I will probably not buy anything until the very end of the year, if I am planning to buy something, and I understand things do go out of stock, but I don't want to end up with something that I'm unable to use. And July is just way too early for me to make any decision. For that matter, even August, September, October, when Hobonichi releases preview party, I feel like this year I'm gonna take it a little slow in deciding what I really want, because I don't want to end up with something that I cannot keep up with. And at least by the end of October, I would know how many blank pages there are in this journal to actually realize whether I can even reuse this. And honestly, I feel like some of the pages that I already have in this particular book, the One Piece version, is also something that I can reuse, unless there is something really great by Hobonichi. I'm not very sure. I will still be, I'm really excited to see the preview party, but I am kind of a little, reluctant this year. I don't know why. So that's how 2023 has gone. So if I were to look at all of my years, I feel like, that my favorite has always been 2022 Cousin Avec, is when I actually used all the pages efficiently. And that's something that I also want to talk about. I am trying to, be a little mindful of myself, I can see the change in how I used to work or how I used to plan. I feel like, I was a lot more creative last year, and I do feel it trickle down into my art pieces as well. I'm trying to figure out what is best for me in terms of both planning, both art journey, and also in a way that I'm not putting too much pressure on myself, because you know what, there's pressure from everywhere. The last thing you need is for you to put pressure on yourself for something that is not gonna help you in any way. I feel though as that, because that's the only thing. I know I might be rambling at this point now, but I do feel that I do need to be a little kind to myself, and that's also the only thing that I would ask you, listener, watcher, to take away from this as well. Our ways of planning using books always change, and what has been working for us one year might not be the same, the coming year. And as your life gets busier or less busier, you're going to have different changes that are going through your lifestyle. So I just, that's probably what I'm gonna, end this entire video with. And I just wanted to say that, I'm trying to make this book work for me right now. And I feel like having this system with these two pens, along with this flag, I feel like, this is something that I wanted to talk about. This flag is, this page flag is something that is a little difficult to write on because not many pens can actually write on this. And I feel like this Pilot Friction has, it writes very well on it. It does take a couple of seconds to dry, but after it's dry, it's perfect. It just does not move. So I feel like, this system where I'm not using too many stickers, I'm only using a bunch of Tombow markers. Basically, this is what I'm using. I'm using the hard tip side to write, and the side to do the brush lettering. The page flag and the page flags that I have writing along with the friction is actually working for me pretty well. And having this Tombow Fudenosuke on this side is helping me just bird vomit, for lack of a better term. So it's working, and I feel like I will continue this until I realize that I probably need a better system, or maybe realize that this system is not working for me. So as I finish this whole segment, I'm just realizing that every single book that I've used has kind of taught me something. The Hobonichi A6, it is quite small, and for some reason just does not work for me when it comes to planning. I also realized through this book that scrapbooking and pasting things, is not particularly my kind of journaling. The Company Traveler's Notebook, while it looks amazing, I feel like this is something that, again, does not work for me, for the fact that I just cannot get it to lay flat without some extra help, which is, again, something that I have to add on to it to help it get there. The dot grid just does not work for me. I know that it's pretty good when it comes to bullet journaling, helps you make those spreads out, but it just does not work for me. And the ones that I'm completely happy about, the Hobonichi A5 Cousin, especially the half years, are like great. I have nothing but good things to say about this. Same goes for the weeks. I feel like the weeks is something that I'm able to efficiently use, however the setup may be. The Hobonichi Cousin, the full year, I'm still contemplating whether I fully like it or not. And when I'm still contemplating, it means that I'm not fully, happy with it. I think it's probably because of the extreme thickness of this book, but I would probably prefer using the half year. And again, I feel like every year is different because I was very artistic in the previous year, not so much in the current year. I do have a little bit here and there, and it's all towards the beginning actually. I feel like as I've gotten through through the months. I'm just tired. So yeah, so there are things that I feel like I'm trying to be kind to myself. Like I have said a million times already, I'm trying to work with what I have. So closing thoughts, I'm still very much undecided for next year, which is why I'm refraining from any pre-orders or any Hobonichi orders even until, you know, the end of November, early December, if I do intend to make any of those, because I'm not very sure what I actually need. There are changes in my life that are coming, and with a lot of these changes, I do feel that I would also need to review my system and make sure that whatever I'm having is something that is actually useful for me and just not an overkill. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think. Have you decided for your lineup already, or are you undecided like myself? Do let me know in the comments, and thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you soon. Bye.